Namaskar. So, does anybody remember what I talked about yesterday? Okay, who wants to say it back to me? Go ahead. Wow, that's amazing. You should be in my class at MIT. This was very well done. So we talked about decentralized AI, this opportunity to think about AI not the way we do today, by centralizing all the information because that slows down everything, but keeping it decentralized. So data, compute, talent, regulations are not centralized, but they stay away. And that's the fastest way to move going forward. What's the other something else we talked about yesterday? Okay, who wants to talk about the God AI? Go ahead. Go ahead. Excellent, excellent. So God AI, and I was talking to my brother who was attending yesterday. He said, wow, your talk was too technical, but the way he understood is he said, oh, when we talked about how in Hinduism we have 33 crore gods, and so even if you have a God AI, we have figured out how to decentralize the gods themselves, right? Like for our weddings, for our education, for traveling, for a new construction, we have gods for different aspects of our life. So we have highly decentralized, even even the gods. So the AIs are also going to be decentralized. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of these concepts and then jump into about how not to do startups, okay? So the first thing to remember is we are all here to figure out how do we create a decentralized AI stack so that we can move in a very fast manner. So city stack powered by decentralized AI. Then we talked about God AI yesterday, and the idea here is really to think about how can we make Kumbh Mela better than Olympics, unlock about $2 billion of economic activity, and then as Kaustubh and Ashwin said, really create a sandbox that this can happen much faster in this setup. So billions of agents. We talked about how Sita Devi will have an experience coming from Bihar through this decentralization, or a rickshaw driver in Igatpuri who might want to get an ability to come and serve the spike in demand, and so on, right? So this is where we are. A lot of people confuse the future of AI with what they can do today with ChatGPT or notebook LLMs and so on, where you're just interacting with one AI at a time. But you have multiple AIs within an organization. You can think of them as agents that are helping each other, which is a good thing, and Raj will show us something more today. The future is really towards decentralized AI, but these agents can be across different organizations, and the organizations themselves could be distrusting, disconnected, and disinterested, but eventually, hopefully, we'll all together build Nanda, which is the networked agents for decentralized AI. Right? So we're very excited to work with you on this. So I'm going to talk about what it means to really build this, and what are the tools we need to build that. So a very simple slide to remember is ChatGPT is about information that's already available in public domain. So think of that as surface web. And decentralized AI is about all the information that's siloed, requires simulations, requires modeling, requires enterprise data, requires streaming information, all the fresh data. And that's where most of the value in AI will be tapped through this decentralization, because you simply will not be able to bring all the data in one place. The other confusion in the AI space today is we get a lot of excitement, especially in the media, is things like chips, cloud platforms, and foundation models. So like NVIDIA, AWS, and OpenAI. But that's just the beginning. And this noise that you see in the media will quickly quieten down over time. And most of the action you will see will be in the applied AI domain, about how do we take these AI possibilities into sectors like agriculture and health and spirituality and so on. And this requires a very different effort. The good news is that this does not require significant capital investments. This can be run through traditional entrepreneurship, through traditional studios and incubators, but it does require you to throw away many of the rule books, many of the playbooks through which we have done entrepreneurship so far. Okay, I won't go into too much into detail, but we really had to throw away all those playbooks to stimulate and have AI ventures going forward. And there's also a lot of confusion between two concepts, what I call screen AI and dimensional AI. Screen AI is where you have summarization, chatbots, and so on. And they're, they look very impressive in the beginning, but they really don't have much of a moat, but still worth doing that, right? And then there's dimensional AI, where you are in the real physical world, working with real physical sectors, and so on. So if you think about the world GDP, what's the world GDP? Anybody knows? How many $1 trillion? It's about $100 trillion, right? And most of that, as you know, is in shipping and mining and insurance and agriculture and so on. It's not what happens on your screen. And that's where dimensional AI. So if you really want to make an impact for the Kumbh, we're going to start thinking about dimensional AI in completely new ways. All right. So I'm going to zip through the next few slides very, very fast. Yesterday we talked about how to do, AI ventures. Today I'm going to talk about how not to do it. Okay. And I know today we are spending time with the startups on go-to-market channels. Tomorrow we're talking about partnerships and pilots and investments. So hopefully I'm not a wet excuse me. Hopefully I'm not a wet blanket, but I'll zip through this very quickly. And if you identify yourself, going down some of these routes, just raise your hand and say, yes, I'm going down this wrong route. Let's see who's brave enough. All right. The first one is there's a lot of confusion about. Thank you. There's a lot of confusion about, how to get some of these things going, and many people have mistakes of focusing on hackathons and contests to build a venture ecosystem, and that's usually a bad idea. That's why this is called. How many microphones do I have? Hello? Maybe it's close to that. Are you hearing echo? I'm hearing echoes. If you can turn down the volume. Testing. Okay, I think it's much better. And that's why this is called Buildathon. Kumbhathon is a Buildathon. It's not a hackathon. It's not a hackathon. It's not a hackathon. And the other mistake that a lot of ecosystems go into is they focus on having all these three things already locked in. A classic incubator will say, what is your team? What's your problem? What's your business plan? And we just help you either with go-to-market partnerships or venture money and so on. Again, a bad idea. So the reason for that is often an innovator is not an entrepreneur, and you have to treat the innovator differently from an entrepreneur. So this is a slide from the class I teach at MIT called AI Venture Studio, and really focus on this process called spot problems, probe solutions. And the idea is that if you want to make an impact, whether it's a nonprofit, for-profit, corporate venture, government venture, and so on, is you have to have a very different approach, which we call a studio approach. So that's kind of the spot probe. We'll share the booklet with you. And the tool we're going to show you, the Gen AI tool, is using this particular methodology as well. So again, I'm going through this very quickly, but hopefully you'll get that. The next common problem with startups is that often you have a tech push versus the market pull, right? So often you have some kind of a shiny toy, some technology you have, and you're saying, this is the most amazing thing. Wouldn't it be amazing if somebody uses this? And this is the venture, which almost never works. What you need to focus on is market pull. So on these two axes, you have kind of market needs and product solutions. By the way, this is a problem I see even among my students at MIT to get their PhD and how they're starting ventures, because often they'll say, this is my PhD, I did amazing research, and I want to convert that into a venture, which almost never works. They have to think about what the market pulls are. So, if you don't know what the market is, but and you also don't know what the technology is, just do that in university, right? If you know the market, but you don't know what the solution is, then just do industrial R&D. The sweet spot for tech startups is when the market is relatively well understood, and the technology is known, but maybe not fully understood. So that's the sweet spot for tech startups. A bad spot to be in is where you don't have market need, but you think you have a technology. Okay, and that's where some of the tools we'll show you in the next few minutes are going to play a role. So if you're in this box, you may be dead very soon, because by the time you raise your funds, build your team, you will not be able to get there. Another problem is that you get into a situation where the market need is known, but your solution is literally straightforward. All you're building is another marketplace, or another app for it, and so on, and it will not have much of a moat going forward because many others will come in the same space. The next one is thinking about the people, the problem, the solution, your team, problem and solution. A common mistake is there's a founder who's very gung-ho about a problem they have identified and a solution they want to work on, and they want to work alone and then or with a couple of people and then get forward. This is not as good. The better scenario is when you have somebody who has seen the pattern over time. They have done it a couple of times before. Maybe they were not the founders, but they were in some other role, and they see a pattern. They have some kind of an insight, and they're going to use this long-term insights, and there's some hypothesis that can do better. But even better than this is people who are not just looking at a single idea and getting obsessed on it, looking at pattern, but really looking at relationship between different entities. Something that somebody on the stage here said today. So like, there's this opportunity, there's the regulations are changing, there's this new sandbox emerging. They're looking at the different patterns and not different relations, not just patterns. And then you're working in innovation network, like you're here. You have a stakeholder network that's already laid out. So you can work with Kumbhathon, and today and tomorrow you're going to meet dozens and dozens of stakeholders who are ready, very eager to see what you have for them. And then you're building an idea in the context of an ecosystem. And that's what Kumbhathon is all about. All right. The next one is working on something that can be done by somebody else in just a few months. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but I call it strive for 5. You have to do something that you're sufficiently early, but not too early. So it's okay if there are 5 other people doing roughly the same thing. If you're the only team working on it, it may or may not be a good idea. Okay. So there is no benefit of being the first in the market. Google was not the first search engine. Facebook was not the first social media platform. And Apple was definitely not the first smartphone, right? So it's okay to have few others, but not too many others ahead of you, and so on. I won't go into the details on this one. All right, this one is a little bit controversial, so I'm sorry if you'll be offended. An innovator may or may not be an entrepreneur. So it's perfectly fine if you have an idea and you have to bring somebody else to take it forward. More importantly, if you're an entrepreneur, it's very important to realize that you don't have to work on your own idea. You can work with some other people who might have better ideas. Not just at the beginning, but throughout the phase, early phases of your company. Another one is just because you are very passionate about a particular area in which you want to make an impact, a startup may or may not be the right way to do it. Maybe you want to do a nonprofit. Maybe you want to write a blog and put the idea out there, and so on. You shouldn't be doing startup because you want to have an impact. There may be other ways to make that impact as well. So make sure you're doing it right. Other things, the last one is another one that people get offended by, which is a grand challenge is not a grand opportunity. Okay? So you might say there's a grand challenge in climate and poverty and all those things, and you might be very passionate about it, but it may or may not be a grand opportunity for a venture right now. And there may be many reasons. Maybe that ecosystem is not digital enough. Maybe there's not enough capital in it. Maybe you don't have skills in it, or you don't have access to the right kind of go-to-market channels. There may be many reasons where you might be very passionate about that grand challenge, but there's nothing you can do about it right now. And the only thing you should focus on is something that looks like an opportunity, not just a challenge. All right? I know this is exactly opposite of what Amir Khan would say, which is, अकेले ही होती है शुरुआत, तुम में होगी शक्ति तो ज़माना देगा साथ. Not true. All right. I'm going to skip over this one, which is when you're hiring your team, what kind of people you should hire. And often you'll get people who's like, I'm a rebel, I'm a maverick, and so on. And these people will be good in the beginning, but if you want continuous, sustained innovation in your organization, whether it's a startup or a corporate or government and so on, you want people who are either pathfinders or solvers. And pathfinder is somebody, the analogy would be you're in a jungle and you have a team that's trying to figure out, it's getting dark, you have to get out there. Somebody's listening to the rustling of the leaves or howling of the animals and looking at some stars to navigate you. You want pathfinders that are taking you out of that problem and into a safe zone. That's the most important characteristic in a team member, and also solvers. I'm sorry I'm going through this faster because I want to take you to some of the cool demos. The next one is timing. Timing is very critical. This is a great plot in one of the books on when it was right thing to do a company in the solar space and when it's not. So if you think about the dollar per megawatt on different energy industries, you see that solar was very, very expensive till about 2012, 2013. So if you started a solar venture before 2012, it was very difficult to sustain because as a typical startup, you have maybe 2-year runway, 18 months runway from your seed round. So if you raise money here, you'll be out of money before the ecosystem has caught on. Because only about 2013 is when there's a crossover point where solar became cheaper than many other many other sources of energy. But if you start too late, 7-8 years after 2013, then you have too many players in the market as well, right? So this is the sweet spot where you would be no more than a couple of years out, and maybe no more than a couple of years after. So within that 5-year window is when you can do your venture. So you have to be very, very analytical about plotting all these things, saying, hey, I'm going to build a solution based on some aspects of smartphone. You're just like, okay, let me plot what's the cost of smartphones. Let me look at the adoption of smartphones. Let me look at the data plans, look at their cost. And you have to plot all these things to see what the crossover point is, so that are you too early or too late in that particular sector. Okay? A very good example right now would be, hey, you have a solution to build based on virtual reality handset, because VR and AR is so exciting. But you should go and plot what's the adoption of virtual headset, VR headsets that you see over the next 2 to 3 years, and will it reach sufficient penetration that your solution can be deployed in a significant manner, right? Either if the less than 1% of the population is going to have VR headsets, then clearly you won't be able to deploy your solution because you're dependent on there having enough virtual reality headsets out there. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So the last one is how to invent and how to innovate. I have a whole Gen AI tool that you can use, but the idea, sometimes it's very confusing. A lot of people come to me, it's like, what's so interesting about being at MIT, and inventing new things? And I say that in one sentence, which is, every time you see a problem, your immediate reaction should be, what can be a solution? Okay? So train yourself to think that way. So if you're just literally walking down the street and you see traffic, or you see some, a wrong billboard, or you see people waiting, your first reaction cannot be complaining and getting frustrated about it. But your first reaction should be, actually the way it can be solved is this. Right? And to do that, to get into that constant, but this is exactly how I live my life. It's kind of exhausting because I'm constantly thinking about solutions when I see a problem. But to kind of put a framework around that, I have this framework called Idea Hexagon. If you just look up Ramesh Raskar Idea Hexagon, you'll see it, which is every time you see a problem or opportunity X, there's 6 different ways to think about what could be their solutions, right? Again, I won't go to the detail, but look up Idea Hexagon. All right, and the final one, there's one more after this. The other one is, if there's a momentum, there's a confusion between what is research, what is R&D, and what is development. So wherever the world is going, wherever the organization is going, you just note that there's some kind of an asymptote where over time, there's a threshold of impact it can make. So you need constant some leaps of technology, innovation to either take you there faster, which is R&D, to that threshold, or a completely new breakthrough idea or research that takes you beyond where the threshold of impact would be, right? And you have to constantly think about, am I in the development phase, am I in the R&D phase, and am I in the research phase? And there's no right or wrong answer, but if you're aware of it in your startup, of which phase you are in, you'll say, okay, all right, I need to accept the fact that even if I do great development, there is a threshold to which I can reach an impact. And you have to have an analytical answer for it in your startup to say, if I continue to do this, this is the limit I can get. So I might want to dedicate 20% of my resources to do some R&D there as well to get there farther, or maybe I want to dedicate 5% of my resources so that I can cross this threshold of potential impact over time. So whether you're running, a 10 lakh budget or a crore budget, or if you're like Kaustubh, running whatever, $1 billion budget, this is how you need to think through of allocating your resources. All right. There's a very famous, there's a very popular joke, which is, there's a guy who is looking for his lost wallet in Central Park in New York, and he's looking under the street light. And the police comes to him and says, like, why are you looking, where did you lose your wallet? He says, I don't know where I lost it in the whole park, but I'm looking under the street light. And he says, why? He says, this is the only place where I can look for it, because the rest of the park is dark anyway, right? And so it's kind of funny that you're looking under the street light when your wallet could be anywhere else, but you can actually use that to your advantage, right? So use the street light to your advantage. So, for example, in astronomy, when you're looking for extraterrestrial life, they look for a signature of water, right? Now, one could argue that there could be alien life that doesn't require water to survive. But what are you supposed to do sitting here on Earth, or Hubble telescope? The only thing you can really look for is signs of water to see if there's sign of life, right? So that's like a streetlight effect, which is you're looking for some proxy to see if that's good enough. So when you're doing a startup, actually you should be intentionally using streetlight. And often, in movies and romanticized version of entrepreneurship, they'll say, you know what, this person was working for 40 years on this one idea, and eventually they made it. But you don't have 40 years, and you would rather have a portfolio, and you should only work on things in your startup, but there's a very good chance that you'll succeed, even if there are all these opportunities that are out there. So in astronomy, you could imagine there's a scientist who says, you know what, I'm not going to believe in the theory that alien life requires water. I'm just going to use every other method out there. But that's usually a waste of time, because there's no easy way you can detect some other signature, some chemical signature, some multispectral signature sitting here on Earth, right? So it's perfectly fine to look for the water signature. All right, and to summarize, when you are dealing with all this information, all these talks, all these conversations going on, this is the path you're going to go through. In the beginning, you have a lot of data, a lot of data points. At some point, you have to convert that into information. I mean, these words like data, information, knowledge, wisdom, they all sound like the same thing, but they're very different. So you take data and then you start marking it. This is good, this is bad, this is useful, not useful, and so on. And then you say, okay, that's great, but how do they all connect with each other? That's useful, but I want to convert into insight. We're saying, of all the things that I have collected, what I care about is the start point and the end point. And the wisdom is figuring out how you can go from a start point to an end point. And once you know that, you can actually make an impact, right? So I'm going to call Pradyumna on the stage in a few minutes. He's working on a really amazing startup to use dashcam video cameras to do city analysis. But he can just collect a lot of data points. That doesn't help. He can start labeling them. That's better. He can start connecting knowledge graphs. That's slightly better. But what he's able to do is actually figure out how to go from point A to point B in his venture. Okay? Again, I went through this very quickly, but watch my talk in slow motion, and hopefully we'll realize that to really build this God AI that we care about with decentralization, we also need to know how not to do these startups. Thank you. All right, so we're going to show you a couple of tools very quickly on how to use Gen AI tools to not to do this, how not to do the startups.
Before coming to Nasik, we are deployed in Go Green cabs, and we help in decision making in transportation, decision making in advertisement billboards, decision making in all the people crowd management. So anything which is happening in the city, you have the live street view with the system. So now we are doing it with the help of dash cams. Our dash cams are installed inside the cars, buses and trucks. So dash cams usually have two views, front and back. Front. Okay. Dash cams usually analyze the outside city. Outside city refers to street view. Security purposes, crowd management.
Okay. He's not doing a very good job doing a 30-second pitch, but that's good. It's pretty jumpy, right? And then So he's saying that in terms of traffic lights, ADAS is being used, optimize traffic flow. What specific technical abilities make your approach superior?
So our dashcams comes with an AI engine. So this means that front view, a dashcam comes with an AI engine. This means the front view we can analyze instantly. And the back view is meant for the security. So this means if a woman is riding inside the cab, if she feels unsafe, there's a buzzer that's created. If inside a truck there's a pilferage happens, there's a buzzer for them. If inside a bus we are keeping, they can count the demand, they can count people. And for the outside view, we're analyzing the entire network of the roads.
All right. So that's good. And so we'll see what comes up. Are you a little bit nervous?
No, sir. So I think it's in a habit to.
All right. So there are many companies like FleetUp that use AI dashcam technology to detect high-risk driving behavior. There are companies like Yogi and Newport that focus on AI-driven solutions, right? So again, I'm just a virtual VC. These are the questions they'll ask. So, how would you compare, specific technical moat, given that these other companies are providing similar solutions?
So our company has a continuous streaming. So this means if a camera is plotted, we are continuously streaming from the dash cam. There is no stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for example, I want to see the continuous street view of the entire city.
Just continue. Don't emphasize a given point. Just continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the continuous entire streaming of the city in one go. So there is no stoppage. And these ADAS, the system that has given up, they're running on alerts. So any collision happens, that's an alert for them. But in our case, you have the continuous videos for all of it.
What else?
Second, the AI engine. This means you don't have to see the videos. These are all automatic. In fact, we are just a computer vision company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Focus on.
And the third thing is that reliability. In our system, you don't need to install CCTVs. Today, I want to watch Nasik. Even with 5 cars, we can watch the entire Nasik in one go. I didn't need to even put a CCTV there. But even if I want to watch if we deploy in a remote area like J&K, with 10 cars, we can watch the entire J&K, and they are all hidden. So
all right,
there is no traverse.
So what would investor or VC ask? So okay, so what's your total addressable market?
We are competing with the satellite companies right now. So companies like Maxar, Planet, they provide top view of the city. We provide the ground view of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Maxar usually have a $9.5 billion contracts with the government. We usually run down on a day-to-day basis. So
okay, and
Maxar,
sorry, I
yeah.
hit enter too soon, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And so your TAM would be of the order of what? So there's, so dashcam camera market is over $4 billion, with about 10% annual growth rate. What's your projected market size in the first year?
Okay, so it's pretty simple. We sell dashcam for 4,500 rupees per month.
Mm-hmm.
We have a basic order size of 10,000 units.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we've been starting with Blue Smart, in which they have a 8,000 unit basic order, and then that's the first that we start. Similarly, with the trucking companies,
mm-hmm.
They usually have a 10,000 units. So
that gives me the number.
About $2 billion.
Okay.
Just if I'm revenuing the total TAM.
Okay. Sounds good. So you get the idea that you can use tools like this to go through. So we have list of thousands of questions. They're all kind of put into different blocks about market sizing, about competition, about team, about stakeholders and so on. And you can take this virtual VC, and we'll give you access to this, and be very, very refined. By the time tomorrow you meet, some of the stakeholders, partners, and investors, you'll be very, very prepared.
Absolutely. I mean,
all right.
This is a great tool there.
Give a big hand to Pradyumna here.